Imagine standing on the battlefield, cannons roaring, and armies clashing across Europe. From the chaos of revolution emerges a single figure, a military mastermind who would challenge the old world order and reshape Europe. His name, Napoleon Bonaparte. This is the story of the Napoleonic Wars, a time when ambition, strategy, and the pursuit of power fueled a conflict that engulfed an entire continent. As we explore these wars, we'll uncover how Napoleon's vision and ambition led to both his meteoric rise and his inevitable downfall. Understand the Napoleonic Wars. We need to step back to the late 18th century, a time of great upheaval. The French Revolution had just torn through France, dismantling centuries-old institutions, overthrowing the monarchy, and spreading new ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity across Europe. But with revolution came chaos. The neighboring monarchies, alarmed by the spread of these radical ideas, formed coalitions against revolutionary France. Enter Napoleon Bonaparte. Rising from obscurity, he quickly gained fame for his military brilliance. By 1799, Napoleon had seized power in a coup, establishing himself as the first consul of France. He had one clear objective: to expand French territory and spread revolutionary principles. But as we will see, these ambitions would soon put him at odds with every major power in Europe. The year is 813. France is at war with Britain, and it doesn't take long for Austria, Russia, and Sweden to join forces, forming the third coalition against France. Napoleon knows he needs to strike in 1805. We see the French and their allies sailing towards the British fleet at the Battle of Trafalgar. The British, under Admiral Nelson, are waiting. The French Navy is crushed in a decisive battle that secures Britain's control of the seas. This is a huge blow to Napoleon's plans to invade Britain. But Napoleon isn't done yet. He pivots, directing his army eastward. A few weeks later, at the Battle of Austerlitz, known as the Battle of the Three Emperors, Napoleon's forces face the combined armies of Austria and Russia. Against all odds, he achieves a brilliant victory, decimating the coalition forces and forcing Austria to sign a peace treaty. Napoleon emerges as the undisputed master of Europe. 4. The War of the Fourth Coalition 1804–1806. But peace in Europe was never meant to last long. By 1806, a new coalition forms. Prussia, Russia, Saxony, and Sweden join Britain to stop Napoleon's expansion. The War of the Fourth Coalition is underway. Napoleon moves swiftly. In October 1806, he meets the Prussian army at the Battle of Austerlitz. The Prussian forces, considered some of the best in Europe, are utterly defeated. Napoleon continues his advance into the heart of Prussia, capturing Berlin. In the harsh winter of 1807, he confronts the Russians at the Battle of Eylau, a grueling, bloody affair fought in a snowstorm, with no clear victor. But by June, at the Battle of Friedland, Napoleon's forces finally break the Russian army. Russia is forced to the negotiation table, and the Treaty of Tilsit is signed. Europe seems to be under Napoleon's control, but only for now. 5. The Peninsular War 1808–1814. Now, Napoleon's ambition knows no bounds. He aims to cripple Britain economically through the continental system, a trade blockade intended to isolate Britain. But Portugal, a key British ally, refuses to comply, and Napoleon decides to invade. The French march into Spain to reach Portugal, but this sparks a fierce resistance. What starts as a political move turns into a full-blown conflict. The Peninsular War. The Spanish people, with British support under the leadership of the Duke of Wellington, engage in guerrilla warfare, a form of combat Napoleon was unprepared for. Battles like the Battle of Bailén in 1808 show that the French are not invincible. Slowly, over 6 years, the French are worn down by a combination of local resistance and British intervention, culminating in the Battle of Salamanca in 1812, where Wellington's forces achieve a decisive victory. Napoleon is learning that conquering nations is one thing, but holding on to them is quite another. 6. The invasion of Russia 1812. Napoleon, however, is undeterred. In 1812, he sets his sights on Russia, determined to force them back into his continental system. He assembles the Grande Armée, the largest army Europe has ever seen, over 600,000 men strong. Napoleon believes a swift victory will bring the Tsar to his knees, but the Russian strategy is clear: avoid a decisive battle, retreat deeper into their territory, and employ a scorched earth policy, destroying anything that might aid the French. By September, Napoleon reaches Moscow, but he finds the city abandoned and burning. With no supplies and facing the onset of a brutal Russian winter, Napoleon orders a retreat. This retreat becomes one of the most catastrophic military disasters in history. The Grande Armée, harassed by Russian forces, cold, and starvation, is decimated. Only a fraction of Napoleon's once mighty force makes it back to France. 7. The War of the Sixth Coalition 1813–1814. The Russian campaign emboldens Napoleon's enemies. Sensing weakness, Paris, a new coalition is formed, the Sixth Coalition, consisting of Britain, Russia, Austria, Sweden, and smaller states. Napoleon, despite his losses, manages to gather a new army, but they are less experienced, and his resources are stretched thin. In October 1813, at the Battle of Leipzig, also known as the Battle of Nations, Napoleon faces the combined might of the coalition forces. It is the largest battle Europe had seen, and Napoleon is outnumbered and ultimately defeated. He retreats to France, but by 1814 Paris itself falls to the coalition forces. Napoleon, recognizing his untenable position, abdicates the throne and is exiled to the island of Elba. 8. The 100 Days in Waterloo, 1815. But Napoleon's story does not end there. In 1815, he escapes from Elba and returns to France. Greeted by cheering crowds, his dramatic return, known as the 100 Days, sends shockwaves across Europe. Quickly, he gathers an army and marches into Belgium to confront his enemies before they can unite. On June 18, 1815, at the Battle of Waterloo, Napoleon faces the combined British and Prussian forces led by the Duke of Wellington and Field Marshal Blücher. Despite initial successes, Napoleon's luck runs out. The coalition forces, bolstered by Prussian reinforcements, defeat Napoleon in a crushing blow. This time, there is no escape. Napoleon is captured and exiled to the remote island of St. Helena, where he spends the remaining years of his life. 9. Aftermath and impact. And so, with Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo, the Napoleonic Wars come to an end. The Congress of Vienna, held from 1814 to 1815, seeks to restore order to a war-torn Europe. Old monarchies are reinstated, borders are redrawn, and a balance of power is re-established to prevent any one nation from dominating the continent again. But the impact of the Napoleonic Wars goes far beyond the battlefield. The war spread revolutionary ideas across Europe, laying the groundwork for future uprisings and nationalist movements. They also revolutionized military tactics and strategy, influencing warfare for generations to come.